Welcome back to the channel, everyone. This is part 5 in our first person shooter tutorial series. So I did realize after I put up the last tutorial that I had actually imported the wrong arms into Unity. I didn't actually import the ones that we made in part 2 and animated. I actually imported a test version that I made. So I've gone ahead and actually imported the right arms into Unity this time and set them up the same. So if you got the last project from Patreon, I will make sure I upload this newer version tonight, and you'll be able to get the updated version with the updated arms. So these arms had slightly better animations. I thought they looked a bit weird when I was doing them in the last tutorial, and I couldn't work out why they didn't look right. But anyway, so we've got the updated version of the arms now in the scene. The only other thing I've done is I downloaded and imported the standard assets from Unity. So just go to the asset store now, download the standard assets and import them into Unity, or it says open in Unity. You just click on that and then you'll be able to download them through your well, you'll be able to import the package through the package manager. So it works a little bit different now, but you'll figure it out. Just go ahead to the store, as I said, download the standard assets, click on open in Unity, and then you'll see it in the package manager and just import it through there. So once you import the standard assets, you'll get an error. So we'll just go ahead and fix this. It's really simple. It's just using the old GUI text instead of the actual newer text. So you can see here it takes you to the error. All you need to do is just get rid of GUI, and then if you left click on text and then right click, you'll get the quick actions. Just left click on that and then choose using Unity Engine UI, and that'll put this using statement up here as well. And that's it. So just Control S, save that, and then go back into Unity and the error should be gone. Alright, so we have no errors and we're all ready to go. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is actually go ahead and set up the movement and the mouse look for our player, and also we're going to incorporate some code that'll actually enable us to have better control over the position and things like that of our hands. This is going to be very handy later on, no pun intended, when we actually have weapons in our hands and things like that, and we'll be able to manipulate the positions the position of it that it's actually in the game. So just say we want to look down the sights of a gun, we can do the animation to do that, but we can do the final adjustments in Unity. So you'll see what I mean when we actually go ahead and do it. I did start to write some code for the character movement and mouse look, and then I realized that the standard assets one is probably a lot better than what I can code myself. So we're going to use the standard asset scripts, and then we're going to manipulate them and learn what they actually do and add our own code to them as well, to make it a bit more advanced and give us some functionality that we don't have. So if you go ahead, you should have your player with your camera as a child, sorry, and then you should have your arms as a child of the main camera. This is what we set up in the last one. So the first thing I'm going to do is on the actual player, I'm going to go to my mesh renderer and just actually click that off so that we don't actually see the capsule anymore, because we don't want to see the capsule when we look down and things like that in the game. So get rid of that. We can also disable the capsule collider, because we're going to actually have a character controller. If we need a capsule collider later on, we can just re-enable that if we want. And I'm not deleting these, because if you need to, see your player better in the 3D space, you can always just click that back on, and yeah, you'll be able to see exactly where the capsule is. So what we're going to do is, if I open up the standard assets and then go to characters, first person characters, prefabs, I'm just going to drag this one into the scene. We're not actually going to use this. I'll show you why we're going to drag it in the scene in a minute. I'm just going to put that in the scene there for a second, and I'm just going to actually disable it like that. And then I'm actually going to go to the standard assets again, characters, first person characters, and go to the actual scripts. And you'll see that we actually have the first person controller and the mouse look. We also got the script for the rigid body first person controller, and then we've got the head bob script. So the reason why I'm going to be using these scripts to start with is they're just going to save us a huge amount of time. I mean, we've already got all the head bob. We've got everything basically set up for us to start with. So it's just a good starting point. And as I said, this script's, there's no reason for me to write out a script to do all of this same stuff because this works really, really well. So if you open up the first person one and then also go back to Unity and open up the mouse look, I'll just quickly explain these scripts so that you understand how this is actually working. So you've got your first person controller script here, and you'll see that it's actually under a namespace. So if you don't know what a namespace is, you can actually keep all your scripts. Say you just wanted to have all your character scripts under one namespace and you didn't want any other scripts to be able to access anything in these scripts, in the character scripts, you would actually put them in its own namespace like this. So you won't be able to access anything in these scripts that have this namespace unless you actually add the using statement up the top here, which you'll see we do in a minute anyway for another script. So it's a good way to keep all your scripts organized. Just say you had all your enemies under one namespace so that only those scripts could access each other and so on. So it just keeps all your scripts organized and allows you to have the same, basically allows you to have the same names and things like that in different scripts without them clashing with, a set of other scripts that you don't want them to. So that's why it says namespace Unity standard assets. And this is the only script that is actually inside of Unity on a game object. As you can see, it's the normal public class first person controller, and it actually inherits from mono behavior, which is anything that inherits from mono behavior is something that you can actually place on a game object inside Unity, and it gives you access to all of the Unity built-in functions and things like that, okay, like your start and update and all that kind of stuff. So also on this script, you'll see we've got the two required components of, type of, require component type of. So what all this does is when you drag this script onto a game object, it will automatically add a character controller and it will automatically add an audio source to the game object that you drag it on. So if you ever want to make sure that, just say your script's using a rigid body controller, you could have a required component of and then actually have it for rigid body so that when you drag the script onto the game object, it automatically adds the rigid body component as well. So yeah, as I said, this one here inherits from mono behavior, but if you look at our mouse look script, it's in the same namespace, but it doesn't inherit from mono behavior. Okay, so this doesn't actually go onto a game object inside Unity. So just to show you, like if you go to the actual built-in first person character here, you'll see we have the first person controller script, but we don't actually have the mouse look script. But we can actually access the mouse look script right here. Okay, so that's because it's in the same namespace and because it's been made serializable. So when you make this serializable, it'll allow this to be shown in the inspector. So that's all this one is doing. Okay. So that's how the two scripts work. You only need to have one script on the game object and you can still use the functionality of the second script, which is the actual mouse look. So this one is how you look around left to right and look up and down, and the first person controller handles your movement and also the your footstep sounds, how you jump, all that kind of stuff. it's got lots and lots of stuff in here, which is really cool. That's why we're going to use it, because it's just a great start. Also, it has the built-in cursor lock, so we don't have to worry about doing our cursor lock. So we can make sure that when we start the game, we don't have our mouse pointer showing until we press escape and things like that. All right, so what we're going to actually do is we'll go ahead and go back into Unity, and we just need to go to our player and then drag and drop the first person controller script onto here. And what we're going to do is go back to the prefab first person controller, and we can actually just right click on the script on there and go copy component, and then go back to the player, our player, and we can right click and just say paste component values, and that'll automatically fill everything out for us. Okay, just exactly how it was on the first person controller that comes with Unity. So it just saves us a lot of mucking around trying to fill out all this, and we can actually change this how we want as well. But that's the only reason why we had the first person controller. So I'll just go ahead and actually delete that out of the scene now. We've got our player. I'm just also going to add a component of type rigid body, and I'm going to use gravity, and we're going to make it kinematic. So when it's set to kinematic, it's not actually going to interact with other game objects in the scene. It's not going to cause, physics to happen when you bump into something. Whereas if we had that off, we could, use the built-in Unity physics and things like that. So just have it as is kinematic, because if you don't, it's probably going to cause some issues. Okay, so make sure you have that ticked. Interpolate, we don't need. Collision detection, we'll just leave that on discrete for now. That's fine. So if we actually start the game, we'll just have a look what happens. Okay, so there we go. So I'm in the scene. I've already got the footsteps, things like that. I can jump. And as I said, we can adjust all this stuff anyway. And here's my hands, how we set them up last time. We just got our idle. We've got the punch now. These are the new animations, or the animations I did in part 2. So punch. We have the unarmed, and then we have the equip without the weird thumb bending when I bring it back up. Okay, so that's working fine. That's a good start. One thing, I don't really like how we can look so far down. We can look up, but looking down like that, I don't really like how far it goes, so we can change that. As I said, all this is customizable. So if we go to our mouse look, you can see here that we have our rotation. We have it on the X for -90 and on the X for 90. So if I just change this to something like 45, so half, and let's just have a look. Now I can't look down as far. That's about as far as I want to be able to look down, okay, like that. I can look up. We could change that so he doesn't quite look up so far either. I might just change that one to 80. Okay, so he won't be able to look up quite as high, and he definitely won't be able to look down as far. So that's all good. You can mess around with all this kind of stuff as well. I'll get into this a bit later on, but it'll take a while. We have our footstep sounds. You can add your own footstep sounds if you'd like. We have our step interval. We can lengthen the actual the run step as well. We've got our run speed and walk speed, so you can adjust how fast you want him to walk and how fast you want him to run. And then you'll notice here that we have this bool here, and it's called is walking, and that by default that starts off. So if we go into the game, you can see that even when I'm not walking, that is true. And if I start walking, it stays true. But if I press the shift and start running, it ticks off. So we're going to use that because I want to know when the character is running, because we don't have a run animation, like his arms don't swing down from side to side when he runs. We could do one, but I don't really like it, to be honest. I don't like the look of it. So what we're going to actually do is use this boolean to manipulate the arms into a position we want when we're actually running, okay? I'll show you how we're going to do that. So we're going to actually start the script for our unarmed hands. So you can see that I've actually tidied up the assets folder here. I've got our animation with the animated controller and things from the asset store we can drag and drop in there. Textures, models, materials, all that kind of stuff. The sample scenes just comes with the standard assets. I just imported everything just for simplicity. We can always take out things we don't want later, but I'm not too worried about it now. So if we go into our scripts, you can see we have our player test script that allows us to test out the animations. So I'm just going to create a new folder and call this player. And then open this folder up, and I'm going to create a new folder. We'll call this arms. So this is going to have all the scripts that go on our different sets of arms, because we will actually, if I go back to Unity for a second, we will actually have a set of arms for each type of arms animation. So we've got our unarmed here, and then when we do our pistol, we'll have another set of arms for the pistol, and we can switch, we can switch between them. And then automatically whatever we have scripts or components on each of these will automatically become active when it's set active in the game. Okay, so that's how it's going to basically work. And if we go back in here, I'll just close that. I actually don't want to do that. Delete that script. This was actually supposed to be a folder, not a script, sorry. So delete that script, and then open up arms, and we will say we want to create a C# script, and I'll call this unarmed. Open that up. Just going to get rid of everything for now. I like to start off clean. So what we're going to do, as I said, they've got the first person controller here, and here is the bool that we're talking about, the is walking one. If you look on the player, we have is walking, but as you can see, it's actually private. Okay, so we can't actually access this from an outside script, and the only reason we can see it in the inspector is because it's been marked as serialized, which just allows it to be shown in the inspector even though it is private. So what we're going to do is just get rid of this and just change it to public. Just going to Control S and save that while I'm here. And then if we go to our unarmed, as I said before, this one is in the namespace of Unity standard assets.characters.firstperson. So we actually need to use that namespace here. So we can say using Unity standard assets.characters.firstperson. Semicolon on the end. So now we can just say first, we'll actually just do this public. Actually, we'll do a serialized field, and we can just say first person controller, first person controller. So now if I save that and go back into Unity, wait for it to update. If I click on my arms and drag this in, you'll see now that we have the slot for the first person controller. So the first person controller script is actually on our player. So all we need to do is drag our player into there and we'll automatically find the first person controller. So if we go back into Visual Studio, we actually want to start making some variables that are going to allow us to change the position and rotation of these arms. So we'll use code similar to this for every single set of arms that we have, because as I said, it will come in very handy later on. So I don't know if you've tried it before, but if you try animating, say, in Blender and you want to animate looking down the iron sights, it's quite difficult to get it to match up perfectly in Blender and Unity. It is for me anyway, so if you're able to adjust it through code when it comes into Unity, it just makes life so much easier. Alright, so we're going to need some variables. So we'll do a public, we'll do vector3. So vector3 is our X, Y, and Z positions. So this will just be our normal position. So this will be the actual position that we start off in. So like you'll see the position of the arms now. This is going to be our starting position right here. We need to have our starting position so that if we move the arms, we can always move them back to how they are now. So we're also going to need I'm actually going to write the privates in just because I know some people are pretty anal about it. I don't usually write it if you've watched any of my other tutorials, but going to write it just because some people get upset. Wanted rotation, and this is always going to just store the actual rotation that we actually want the arms to be in at the current time. So then we're going to need to do a public, and it's going to be a float this time. We're not going to use the vector3, and this is going to be the actual run rotation. So when we start running, we want to rotate the arms. So we can go run, and we'll call it just X rotation. And like you don't have to rotate it on like both axes when you're running, but you might need this for some other things. So we'll also do a public float, and we'll call this run Y rotation. And we'll do a public vector3, and this will be the run position. And we're going to equal this to vector3 dot 0. So vector3 dot 0 is just 0 on the X, Y, and Z. It's just the same as writing like vector3 0 for X, 0 for Y, 0 for Z, like that, okay? Okay, so that's all the variables we're going to use for now. This is eventually we're going to add all of the code so that when we punch, we can control the animations for punching and unequipping and equipping. We're also going to, call a function that allows us to damage things when we punch them, and maybe, like if we punch, I don't know, like a rock or something like that, like we have some particle effects or something, or blood when we punch an enemy, that kind of stuff. This script will have all of that stuff in it when we're finished. So we'll just do a void update. So all this needs to be called in the update function, and we're just going to do a float and call it step. and we're going to equal that to 2 and times it by time dot delta time. So you'll see where we're going to use this in a minute. It's basically just like a little timer, because we're actually going to use this as we transition from, say, the normal pose to the rotation that we want when we're running, and then back from that rotation when we're running back to just the normal arms position again. You'll see in a minute. So now what we need to do is check if the first person controller dot, I think it was called M is walking, that's it. And we want it to be the opposite of that, because, oops, I've actually got rid of one of my brackets, hang on. Okay, so exclamation mark before it. So if it is not walking, so if that little box is not checked, which we know it's only not checked when he starts to run, as we saw before, then we want to start manipulating the arms. So we'll do transform dot local position equals vector 3 dot move towards, and then in these brackets we're going to say transform dot local position, comma, run position, comma, step, and then close that off with a semicolon, and then we'll say wanted rotation equals new vector 3 and that will be run X rotation run Y rotation and then 0F. So you can see what these functions take in here. So the move towards one, you've probably used that in games before. It's just going to move this object from its current position, its local position we're going by, to the run position by the step time. So then the wanted rotation, we're just going to set that to a new vector 3, and it's going to be the run rotation X on the X-axis. It's going to be the run Y rotation on the Y-axis, and then 0 on the Z, because we don't want anything on the Z-axis, because that's forward and back. So that's all fine. Then we can say else. So if the player is not running, if he's walking or standing still, we just want the wanted rotation to equal vector 3.0. So as I explained before, that's just shorthand of this having all zeros, and also we want to move back to the normal position. So we say transform dot local position equals vector 3 move towards dot move towards. So we're just doing the same as up here, but we're actually going from the position that we moved it to back to the normal position. So it's transform dot local position to the normal position by the step. And then underneath that, we actually just want to actually lerp this so that it's a little bit more smooth. It's not just like one position to the other. So transform dot local rotation. I mean, this is lerp the actual rotation, sorry. Quaternion dot lerp transform dot local rotation. Quaternion dot Euler. And then in parentheses, we put the wanted rotation, and then a comma after that, and then the step times 3f. You can adjust this how you want. If you want it to take longer to lerp the rotation, just actually change this value here. Just mess around with it and get it looking how you want. Just remember that it's only controlled through here, and so is the actual step. Okay, so you have to go back into the code and change those here, but this should look fine for most of your needs. I think this one looks all right. So if we go back to Unity now after we've saved, I know that is a bit complicated, that code there, but if you're more of a beginner, but don't worry, you basically know what this is doing. As I said, all we're doing is moving our arms to a certain position when we start running, and then when we're finished running, we want the arms to go back to their normal position. So you'll see that here. If we go to our arms, we now have all of our public variables. So for our normal position, we just want to go up here and just copy the Y and Control V to paste that in, and then also copy the Z, Control V, paste that in. So the rotation we want on the X, so don't forget the X is the horizontal going across like this, as you can see here. So this will either move the arms up or down, so, or rotate them up or down, I should say. So we'll try 5 in here to start with. Don't really, like if we go here, just to explain this a bit better, I'm actually just going to go to gizmos, and I'm just going to make the icons a lot smaller because they get in the way. So if I click back on my player, my arms, sorry, yeah, you'll see the Y rotation is going up and down like that. So if I rotated on the Y, like here, I'd be going side to side. I don't really, you might want the arms to go to a side when you run, but I don't want mine to move to the side, like, so I'm just going to keep that as 0, and so I'm going to keep this as 0, and then the run position, I want, do we want to move? We can either make the arms go forward or back, or we can go up or down, or left or right. So maybe just try -1.5. Just have a look. We can always change this while we're in the game. So if we go to our game now, and I'm just walking, that's fine. It's not doing anything it shouldn't. If I hold down shift while walking, oh, my arms go up a lot. We don't want that. So it's because I've got -1 on the Y. If I change that back to 0, click on here to go into the game. course. So I'm actually just going to copy these values. Control V. Copy these. Control V. So I want my run position to stay the same as my normal position in this case, and I just want to actually rotate the arms a little bit, okay? So you can actually have a different position if you want, but I'm just going to get this working for now and not spend all day messing with it. So as you can see, I run, the arms sort of move forward like that. So it gives the impression that you're actually moving faster, like something's changed in the game. You don't have to have your arms flailing about crazy like you're running. And you can do whatever you want for each weapon that you have, okay? So see my arms go forward like that and then they come back. Alright, so that is basically the gist of it. You can punch. Yeah. Alright, so that's probably going to do it for today because we've done a fair bit. This has gone for quite a while. So in the next one, we'll probably start setting up, we might set up the actual animations and things so they're in this script as well. So we're not actually just using this test script here. And once we've done all that, then we'll go back into Blender and actually do the arms with a pistol and get them animations done. And then we can bring that into Unity, and then we can start working on the pistol as well. We'll have to get the pistol working and things like that first, and then we can probably go to switching between the weapons and things like that. So it's all similar to what we've done in the other tutorial series. I mean, it's just a lot different when you actually have to worry about the arms and animations and things like that as well. So it's a little bit more complicated, but I'm sure you guys will be fine. And we just saved ourselves a lot of time by using these built-in scripts, and as you can see, they work really well anyway, and we can adjust pretty much anything you would like. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy the tutorial, and I'll see you all soon. Cheers.